you for joining us for today's Ipsos Virtual Roundtable featuring best-in-class tips for inclusion initiatives at the heart of qualitative research. Today's roundtable guests are among the most talented moderators in the industry, and you can read more about them on the slide in front of you. So now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to get us started and to introduce today's moderator, Janelle James, Senior Vice President with Ipsos UU. Janelle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ellen. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm so excited to moderate this conversation with 4 moderators. So I'll definitely need to step up my game for this one. We have 4 of the most talented moderators in the business here. Combined, they have over 90 years of marketing and qualitative research experience, and they are all celebrated consultants in the Ipsos UU family. At Ipsos UU, we take pride in being the voice of all people. That means amplifying, representing, and illuminating the experiences of everyone in our society, including the underrepresented, marginalized, excluded, and even sometimes forgotten. To that end, we actively work to interrupt bias in all parts of research that favors traditional ways of working and mainstream audiences. Inclusion is integral to who we are and what we do. We do quite a bit of work in this space and have a broad definition of inclusion when it comes to qualitative market research. Our inclusion work tends to fall into at least one, but many times all 6 categories, which are race and ethnicity, gender, sexuality, age, generation, ability, which we define as neurodiversity, mental health, disabilities, and body size, Socio-Economics, which for us is class, education, and housing, and finally nationality, which is citizenship and language. We also just launched our Qualitative Inclusion Council, of which these fantastic 4 moderators are a part. Our Inclusion Council conducts a great deal of our inclusion studies, and they're also thought leaders. So you're in for a treat today. We are going to take a peek behind the curtain to understand how these experts keep inclusion at the heart of their work in order to conduct best-in-class research. So without further ado, let's meet our marvelous moderators. Guys, I'm actually going to have you introduce yourselves. So if you can briefly tell me your names, how long you've been in the Ipsos family, what your areas of expertise are when it comes to inclusion, and a brief story or a brief, some brief details about a recent inclusion project that you've worked on. So Kim, would you like to start?
I would. Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Saxon. I've been with the Ipsos family. I love how you said that, for 17 years. It does feel like family. My inclusion specialty areas are race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic. In terms of a recent project, it was for a financial services client, and they wanted to understand more about how Blacks think about money. So I led these like family friend sessions online. And the fascinating part about this one was this really careful attention to recruiting and intentional emphasis on diversity within the Black race. So, you know, because we're not a monolith. So we were exploring how being of Caribbean descent or Haitian heritage may potentially impact one's approach to money management. And it was really important. And I learned a lot, and so did the client. It was a great project.
Wonderful. Ozzie, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Ozzie Totten, and I've been a moderator with Ipsos UU since September of 2016. My inclusion specialty areas are socioeconomic and gender/sexuality. Those are my 2 passion areas there. And a recent project that I was lucky enough to work on was a legal services client actually contacted us to kind of explore how the queer community thinks about legal needs and how current communications of legal providers might not be reaching this community in the ways that it reaches the mainstream. And so we held an online discussion board with our panelists to kind of see what their legal needs might be and where those breakdowns in communication might be, and learned that there's a lot of distrust in the legal profession amongst the queer community, and a lot of a need for a need for the legal providers to kind of speak to this community directly and make them feel safe and welcome in a way that they don't necessarily feel overwhelmed. So that was really exciting and really interesting.
Sounds exciting. Wendy, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Wendy Grauer. I've been working in qualitative research for 25 years and with Ipsos for 2 years. I'm a bit of a newbie, but not really. I love qualitative research. I think there's so much empathy that we can express through our work. And I think that's where diversity and inclusion comes in as a passion for all of us, because we are truly learning about consumers from all walks of life. And we like to start with that in mind when we recruit for our studies. So I think we'll get into that a little bit later, but my key emphasis is Gen Z. Been working with them for about 15 years, plus size and consumers with disabilities. So I have a passion for all these groups, but the one that I think is really taking charge, which I just love to see, is the Gen Z population. They are true advocates for social change. And that just inspires me so much. So they're the ones that are breaking down barriers. And brands are really responding to the needs of this diverse generation as they're advocating for these marginalized groups. I have 3 Gen Z kids of my own, one who was recently diagnosed with Asperger's. So I'm on a journey with that and learning a lot about neurodiversity for sure. But they're bold, they stick up for each other, and I just love seeing that. So a recent study that I worked on was with the blind and low vision population. And there was an app that was developed to enhance their independence, navigating transportation, retail, food and beverage locations. And it was so rewarding to see the freedom that they found through that app. So it was neat to literally walk a day in their shoes. And it was so eye-opening seeing how this one app could enhance the quality of their everyday experiences that we as able-bodied people take for granted, you know? So it's good.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Virginia, last but not least.
All right. So my name is Virginia Armas, and I've been with Ipsos also a long time, 19 years this year, actually, capacities, different countries, but yeah, 19 years, a long time. Inclusion areas are race, ethnicity, and also nationality, citizenship, language, which fit me really well. I think I'm bicultural myself and bilingual, and I've been interested and very committed to understanding inclusion, diversity, and stereotypes ever since, you know, I came to the US as a student. And a recent project, I was thinking about a project for a CPG, in the CPG space, for a beauty brand that wanted to create a whole line of products for Latinas. And so very similar to what Kim was saying, we had to think about the diversity within the Hispanic. We have Latinas with different races and mixed race and whites and blacks and everything in between. So that also meant different skin types and needs and hair types and needs. So the research, you know, it was very interesting. We had to inform everything from ingredients to fragrance to packaging to claims to messaging. So it was very comprehensive. It was a lot of fun too.
Wonderful. I love hearing, because I don't get the chance to talk to you guys all the time. So
Right.
great to hear about some of the work that you're doing right now. It's so fascinating. The first question I have for you and is kind of an interesting one, maybe creative, maybe weird, depending how you want to classify it. I would love for each of you to come up with a nickname for yourself, but not any old nickname. I am interested in your conducting research inclusively nickname that helps me understand what's most important when you are connecting with an audience that may be of a different race or gender, or when you're working on an inclusion study. So I'm trying to decide who I call on first. Ozzie, do you have a nickname?
I do. I got one. So I guess my nickname would be pulled from the 3-time Oscar-nominated film Encanto. I'm going to go with Bruno because a lot of times our clients don't really like to speak to these marginalized communities and kind of keep them marginalized in a way. But once we do start talking to and about Bruno, then they can really show us the future. And it might not be the exact future that we dream of or imagine, but it's an exciting future nonetheless. And we need to talk to the Brunos of the world and hear what they have to say in order to kind of uncover that there.
That's cool.
Wonderful, wonderful. Love it. Kim, nickname, do you have one?
Okay, I do. I was thinking about Sojourner Truth. Now it is February. It's Black History Month, so this can be our Black History Month moment. But Sojourner Truth, as many of you know, was an activist, a prolific storyteller. And she talked a lot about the intersection of social justice issues, women's rights, slavery, championing change, and all of that. And I think her stories about that were powerful. So when I'm conducting Qual research inclusively, it allows me to set that environment for participants to share their truths, hence the name, and establishing that environment for truth and authenticity is really important in all projects, but I think it's especially important when we're dealing with these types of projects where we're trying to amplify a voice that hasn't been heard. It's really important. And we want deeper understanding, or maybe we want to inspire some change, within our clients. So I felt like Sojourner Truth felt like the right fit.
Good call on the Black History Month connection.
There we go.
Virginia, you want to go next?
Yeah, so kind of Ozzie gave me an idea. I was thinking about Enola Holmes, also from the character from that film, is the younger sister of Holmes. Because I see her as the ultimate seeker of truth, right? She's always questioning the status quo. Why are we doing this? Is this serving anymore? What can we do about it? Looking for change. At one point, I think she said something around the lines of, I was taught to watch and listen. To me, this is the most important thing. That's the definition of what a good researcher is, in my view, and extremely important to when we speak about these diverse communities, to really listening to their stories, to their struggles, to their fears, to their dreams. So that to me is watching, observing, listening.
Enola Holmes, love it. Last but not least, Wendy, nickname.
Okay, this is more of a creative one. I went with Super Size Me because all sizes are super, and it's important for brands to acknowledge the beauty and body positivity. The average American woman has a size 16, and celebrities like Beyonce and Adele and brands like Dove and Nike and ASOS, they're campaigning and innovating to change the story around the definition of beauty in America. The Love the Skin You're In campaign, it heightened the self-esteem of women and girls of all shapes and sizes. But the hard part is that some consumers, they're not always prepared to change the story. Like when the plus size Nike mannequin, I'm sure many of you heard about it, went viral, attracting widespread criticism. Like as physicians and journalists believe Nike was supporting obesity through their campaign. So it's important for us to understand the story and truly realize that Nike had good intentions when they designed this mannequin, and that's women are starting from a space that we don't often think of. So they're designing, fitwear to help them to improve their, their body positivity and their shape and their health. So it's just, it's a story that's beginning, and I love how it's unfolding, and I think that there's still a ways to go.
Wonderful, Super Size Me. I love this exercise, and you guys did such a fantastic job with it. First question I want to ask, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, has been increasing in importance for organizations and brands steadily since the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020, so almost 2 years now. How has this impacted your work as a qualitative researcher? Kim, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I think that the whole George Floyd murder really touched everyone back in 2000, and it really impacted everyone. And honestly, I had a fear that some organizations may have like a knee-jerk reaction to that and jump on the bandwagon, like with a short-term kind of Band-Aid fix, like, okay, we're going to run some ads with Black people and mixed race people. And I had a fear that it wouldn't be lasting, it would be not authentic, not from the heart. And I think it's inspired me because I think if we continue to focus on inclusivity and qual research, we have an opportunity to keep diversity, equity, inclusion, strategic, like in the forefront for a wide array of our companies, and keeping that conversation going, keeping the lasting change, and I am seeing keeping it going is really important, I think, and I think it keeps me really inspired. It has re-inspired me in terms of our discipline and what we can do.
So I'm hearing that the conversation has continued,
Yes.
and there's been a lot of interesting change. Ozzie, do you want to build on that in any way? How has your work been impacted? What kinds of opportunities for projects are you seeing? Give me a sense.
Yeah, to echo, I feel like there's, I was also worried that our work would really become a lot of surface level stuff, but it seems to have a much deeper impact, and brands that we're working with and companies that we're working with are really taking to heart and kind of actually actualizing some changes that in their communications that were really exciting to see and really powerful. It's also, I've just had a lot more DEI work come to the table, which is exciting. This isn't something that a lot of clients weren't doing this before that moment. And it seems like this is something that's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds right now. And a lot of companies and clients that we have long established relationships with really seem to want to change, right? And to want to move this forward and to want to start engaging in this work in a way that maybe they just weren't before. And so that's been really exciting and a really positive thing to come out of a really ugly moment.
Mm-hmm. Really fair point. I'm curious, what trend, technology advancement, or phenomenon has been most influential or disruptive when you think about your role as a qualitative researcher today? It's so interesting because, I mean, just the fact that we're all on Zoom,
right?
Having this session, where even a couple years ago, we probably would have done this, in person. But so much of our work is virtual or online now. So I'm just curious, Wendy, do you want to talk a little bit about, changes or things that have been most influential to your work today?
That was the exact trend I was going to mention, was that, since the onset of COVID, we've begun heavily engaging in borderless research, because we can reach the consumer anytime, anywhere. And I think especially with diversity and inclusion work, this practice has given us the ability to bring more people together that maybe couldn't drive themselves to a focus group facility, or they're balancing so much by taking care of, people and their families that have disabilities, or by just being able to see into their lives and the daily, pains and frustrations, because we can see inside their homes now. Like they give
everything's an in-home interview.
Yeah.
And they take us along commutes. They include us in play with their children on their living room floor. Like we're able to really do and see and experience so much more of what's happening in their actual environment. So I think that the virtual conferencing has been really helpful with qualitative research.
I love that word, borderless. You really planted that in my head. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts on trends or changes that you've seen that really have been impactful? Anyone?
Yeah, you go, Virginia, sorry.
Okay, I was gonna say, and I don't know if this has been your experience as well. I think what I'm seeing is that people are more willing to share. I think driven by both, right? COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement, social justice movement. I think there is this sense of shared experience and or a common destination when it comes to social justice and racial equality, right? So I think this is kind of like people are more open and more willing to share, their thoughts, their fears, their uncertainties as well about the future, the change that they want to see. In a study that Ipsos with the World Economic Forum, 79% of people want to see a more sustainable and equitable world. Mm-hmm. So I think that there is that momentum and shared experience that is kind of like motivating people to want to share, raise their voices, and be part of the change as well.
Yeah.
Love that. Ozzie, you were saying?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of build off of what Wendy was saying about how not having to meet in person has actually really opened up, especially in the gender and sexuality space that I work a lot in. A lot of times people might not necessarily be comfortable being as out and open in the world as I am blessed enough to feel and be, and that can preclude them to coming into a facility or to inviting people into their home for an interview. And so having the ability to kind of reach those people who are part of this community, but aren't necessarily as comfortable living in that community out and proud in the same way has been really, it's something that's come to the forefront a lot and really changed the way that I think about the community and think about the people that we're reaching with our research.
That's a great point. And something to tag on to that too is e-commerce has really boomed with the plus size market, because they don't like to go into a dressing room and try on clothes. It makes them feel very uncomfortable. And a lot of, clothing brands have kind of marginalized the plus size community by pushing, their section to the back of the store. So being able to order online, it just feels so much better for them to shop openly. And I just love, how these conversations are opening up. The doors are opening, and we're able to just dive deeper into people's lives and learn things we've never known before about these consumers.
Yeah. It's so fascinating just to think about the fact that, COVID and the pandemic has isolated us in a lot of ways, but also created so much more access in a way that is so unprecedented. I mean, both with, people feeling vulnerable, but literally having access to so much more. So it's such an interesting dichotomy. I'm curious, we are all generalists. We work across sectors and audiences. I'm curious, what strategies do you leverage to authentically connect with respondents who might be of a different race, of a different gender? I'm curious, Virginia, I see you nodding, so you wanna?
Yeah, that's so interesting because so I think in a way it's in the DNA of a moderator, a researcher to come into the room, like I like to say, with this open mind, with the mindset and the disposition that it's all about them. It's not about, I don't have an agenda. It's all about listening to their stories, their fears, their challenges. So I think it's in the DNA of, it comes with the job. But beyond that, there's, for myself, I always remind myself that it's really about two things only. Is connecting with them as human beings, and we share that in common, and really being there, listening to them 100% with genuine curiosity and interest. I think that's they pick up on that. When you create that environment, then people open up, no matter how different they are, to yourself.
That genuine curiosity is your Enola Holmes right there.
There it is. It's back.
There you go.
Virginia, I like what you said about that human connection. I think earlier in my career, I was maybe a little more robotic and felt like I didn't want to share too much, right? To potentially influence someone, or I was, wanted to be more neutral. It's empathy, listening, but more neutral. So I think what's helping me now is to strike a bond, strike a connection, share something about me, something small. It doesn't have to taint the whole thing, you know, something small about me that helps me connect with someone who's not like me on a human level. So I did this triad with guys who were friends, and you know, we were talking about money, I think, and we dubbed them the alpha males. You know, they were trying to impress each other, impress me, who knows? But I spent a few minutes just talking about sports. One of them had on a football jersey. So just a few minutes about what quarterback do you like? What team needs a better coach? You know, just a few minutes. I think they saw me differently, broke the ice, and then we kind of rolled right into the whole, well, I'm in debt, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. You know, but sometimes you just have to find that little connection, and then things just open up.
I love that, particularly because, you know, qualitative research is really the only part of market research that actually talks to people directly.
Right.
It
That's
has
right.
the opportunity to engage and like ask follow-up questions. And so you're
Yeah.
right, you know, sharing and having that connection point is so unique to what we do. Ozzie, any strategies on how you connect with?
Well, yeah, I think there's like kind of building off of what Kim was saying there. There's this kind of like old school view of qualitative research where you don't share anything about yourself. But I think in order to have an authentic conversation with somebody, a conversation's a two-way street, right? And so you need to be able to kind of share and share those moments with other people. And if there is something that reminds you of a moment in your own life or something, like obviously you're not like telling them all about your mom growing up or whatever it might be, but like there are a couple of like funny anecdotes from my life that I keep in my back pocket. And so when somebody like is when somebody like when the conversation leads there, I can kind of share something that gives them a smile, gives them a little respite in the conversation before we kind of move back into what we whatever topic is at hand, right? So I find that having those little anecdotes and being able to kind of share a little bit of yourself and it kind of loosens up everybody in the conversation, both yourself and the person you're talking to, and really allows them to feel more free and able to have a conversation.
It's like stimulus to keep the conversation going.
Exactly.
Wendy, do you have any thoughts on strategies that you might use to connect with audiences?
Yeah, I like how you're mentioning that, you know, big data is great. We can, you know, build, you know, part of the story, but we only get half of the story. So, you know, by leaning in and really listening to our consumers through qualitative research, it adds so much depth to your brand story. It adds depth to the consumer story. So I always start with the recruit in mind, just making sure that we recruit our research to include, you know, a diverse representation of consumers, because you never know what you're missing in the story if you don't include those conversations to the table and invite them to the story.
That totally makes sense. I'm curious, how do you guys feel about DEI research that doesn't include Qual? No.
Not a good idea.
Why is it not a good idea?
Not a good idea.
You're asking the wrong people.
I think it's because, you know, if it's all quant, I mean, surveys have bias. It's based on who put the survey together, and it's just the structure of it can be biased. So I think the important thing is to use Qual to inform maybe some quant, to hear the real voice, to get the issues and the themes forward, and then maybe you can validate it down the line with quant. But it's too much intersecting stories. It's too much real life stuff that you just can't put on a questionnaire. So I feel like Qual's imperative to really hear the voice if you're doing DEI, for sure.
Yeah, in quant, you only get what you ask for. You know,
Right. How do you know what to ask?
Yeah, you have to know what you're asking for first. So I love how Janelle always talks about the Qual sandwich. So, you know, starting by exploring through Qual and finding out, you know, what's some tidbits, like what are some of these key learnings we never even imagined, and then following up with quant to validate, you know, from a larger sample, and then, you know, going back to Qual again to really dive deep and say, hey, did we get it right? Is this really the direction that we need to take our innovations or a new concept, or you know, let's shop these ads with them that we've developed. So there's so much beauty in marrying both of you know, types of research, and that's what we have. So many experts at Ipsos that we work, you know, and partner with, and we learn from each other and kind of contribute all to the big story.
My next question is a fill in the blank. Okay, so fill in the blank. I can tell when inclusion is truly a priority for studies when blank. Ozzie, you're nodding. You're the first that I saw nodding. How can you tell? How do you fill in that blank?
When the screener that the client comes to us initially doesn't just say man or woman. When there are third options or more options, or doesn't include that at all. But if you come to me with a screener that has the gender binary and that's it, I often have a little moment where I sit down and I need to kind of explain that that's bigger than a one or the other, and we need to expand our thinking on this.
Love that. How would you fill in the blank?
I was thinking of it that way. I was also thinking of it of I can tell it's a priority for my client when a C-suite stakeholder shows up to the kickoff or pretty close. So suddenly, oh, this isn't just checking the box. This study has some real importance for this client. So I think of that, like who's involved in the kickoff, who's even listening. You know, when we see the names pop up on our virtual back room, that gives me a signal that it's a priority.
Yeah, definitely. I love that, particularly because what we're seeing a lot that is very important for inclusion work is stakeholder engagement across the organization, even if we're just doing consumer work. Virginia, how would you fill in that blank? I can tell when inclusion is truly a priority for studies when blank.
When inclusion permeates every aspect of the project from the very beginning, right? So, you know, from proposal to, because sometimes, I mean, we talk about all of these communities are diverse. So sometimes these decisions have budget implications and timing implications. But, you know, when we come to a client and say, okay, we want to talk to Black African Americans or Hispanics or Asians, and we tell them we have to represent the U.S. population here. We have to listen from everyone. So those have certainly, you know, the design has to include that. And that has budget and timing implications. So I think when inclusion drives decisions from the very beginning, I think that's when I feel like they see that as important. It's a priority. Yeah.
Wendy, how would you fill in the blank? I can tell when inclusion is truly a priority for studies when blank.
I was going to just echo what everyone else has said with the study design. I mean, if you are innovating a new login process, changing your queue lines, your packaging, who are you thinking of? Like, what are your consumer groups that this is going to impact? Is it going to impact, you know, blind and low vision? Is it going to impact, you know, plus size consumers? Will it impact the African American community or the GLBTQ community? What are they going to think about your product or your service, and how is that going to make them feel? So just, you know, starting with the end in mind through your study design, just making sure you include those groups.
Love it. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about how you keep inclusion at the heart of qualitative work and how it really comes to life. I would love for you each to share a case, no company names, but I would love to know a few things about, you know, some recent work that you've done. A little bit of background so we understand the context, maybe what the key objectives were for that study, how you made sure an inclusive mindset was top of mind throughout the study, maybe any intersectional narratives that might have been important for this, any unique challenges, and just high-level results if you're at the stage where there are results. So I know those are quite a few questions, but maybe you guys can take 2-3 minutes and walk me through something that the audience would find interesting. Kim, you want to start?
Yeah, I had I'm thinking about health. That's kind of my passion. I was working with a community for the context or the background. So you may have to nudge me to make sure I can hit all those points. A community health organization in the Midwest. They were trying to reduce the rate of sudden infant death syndrome in the Black African American community. And there's a concern with SIDS, but it's also preterm babies, and it's also maternal health, which is a hot topic now. Maternal health is really, really important. So it's beyond, oh, put baby on their back. You know, there's something deeper going on. So our learning objectives were to learn more about the experience of Black African American moms and dads across the socioeconomic spectrum, their experiences with their healthcare provider, their experiences with their family and with their community. So I made sure there was an inclusive mindset throughout the study. The location of the research was important. This was a little bit pre-COVID. We chose a centrally located library that was easy to access by car and by public transportation. We provided childcare because we were speaking to new moms, pregnant moms. So we made it easy trying to be where they were. And I think we could do
a little bit more about the library, because I've never heard of that. I think
we were in a public library, like a conference room, and it was adjacent to the children's library where all the kids' books were, and there was a babysitter service watching the kids, and the moms and the dads were separate, were with me in a room right there. So it wasn't a facility, you know, it was a comfortable place. It was a familiar place.
And neutral in such an amazing way.
Oh, yeah. And it wasn't fancy, you know, it was a conference room, but everyone got there, and no matter where they lived in town, and I think everyone was at ease too. So that was important. I also used a research tool called Syncytium, which is a Ipsos proprietary tool that gets at human motivations. So for this project, I used self-projection. So I had to have images of people that look like my participants, the right array of Black images, and they were to choose a person who was their parenting twin, who approached prenatal care, child care the way they would, through their eyes. So that was a way that by finding the image, and I had to have the right images there, they could be talking about themselves and telling their story without telling their story. They're telling this image story. So, but it had to be right. It had to be culturally, it had to be easy, inclusive. And then the other thing I think that kept inclusivity top of mind was amplifying dad's voice. What role did he play throughout the pregnancy that may have impacted mom's health? What role did he play with the baby? What were his thoughts and feelings as a parent? Because I think there's some stereotypes about Black dads and some misconceptions. So it was really important to bring his voice in. So I think the big aha here, like the intersectional narrative, was through the parenting twin exercise, through the map of what happened in your pregnancy, what happened when baby came. Stories emerged. And I think the most actionable part was we learned that there was something going on with the interaction with the healthcare provider. There was something, communication wasn't clear. There wasn't a collaboration between mom, dad, and this doctor. Medical questions weren't answered. There was a little bit of off-putting assumptions about dad not being involved. It's just something wasn't quite right with that connection. And I think that was really an important aha for the client. So then I guess in the end, we delivered a really full report with verbatims and images. It was easy to share, easy to digest. We came to a stakeholder workshop, part of the strategic plan for this community health organization. We came there with the data, presented, shared our findings. There were physicians in the audience. There were nurses or community leaders, a whole lot of discussion about what needs to be done, and they were serious about it. And I really believe our findings, along with other things, set the stage, provided the fodder for this healthcare organization to do holistic implicit bias and culture communication training with the healthcare professionals in their system. So that was a win. Just acknowledge this is part of it. You know, that was like a huge win. That this training was happening, and they were hearing the voices of the moms and dads in the library. You know, that kind of solidified
I
it.
love so many things about this. I mean, the intent of the project being really focused on the marketplace and improving, you know, healthcare outcomes for this community, but then also the direct impact that it had for the organization as well, to just improve how they're thinking about it. It's really phenomenal, really
And
phenomenal.
I think the healthcare impact was huge, Janelle. I'm so excited about this. I kind of tear up. I shouldn't. I was really excited about the rate of sudden infant death syndrome decreased like 40%.
Oh, wow.
So that means more Black babies reached their first birthday. Moms were healthier. Sure, it wasn't all, you know, Ipsos research, but just being the spur, you know, just pushing that narrative, and all these other things happen to impact health. So that was just really, really meaningful for me.
It's amazing when your purpose like really meshes with the work that you do, and it happens so often in this type of work. Virginia, do you want to share a case with us?
Yes, so this was for a tech company. I'm thinking about this project right now. So this company wanted to be part of the change, and specifically they wanted to work with their communications. They wanted to actually create communications that represented these diverse communities in a way that it felt authentic. We're seeing a lot of these lately, authentic representation, and and how do we execute against that. So they wanted to speak with Black African American consumers, Hispanic consumers, and Asian consumers. So it was very, very clear from the beginning that we had to include that inclusive lens. And so the proposal states we describe the need to represent these communities, the diversity within these communities, as I was saying before. In the case of Hispanics, for example, you know, a lot of people think that being Hispanic is a race, but it's not. It's ethnicity. We can talk about ethnicity or cultural or their cultural background or heritage, but so we know sometimes we have to educate clients a little bit that there are Hispanics from all races. Black, so we had to talk to all of them, Black, Hispanics, Caribbean, you know, most of the times, and white, and, you know, all shades in between. So so that was important. Also, so what we did is we did a research in 2 phases. In the first one, we asked them to complete some homework, which included certain, you know, different activities and exercises, so not just the question answer. Like to play with activities and exercises. For example, one of them was simply saying, you know, find and upload an ad that truly and authentically represents who you are. It's important to you, your values, your identity, your community. So very non-directive activities and really very open activities, I think. And this was on purpose, right? The non-directive questioning for these activities, because we wanted to for these for consumers to freely express what authenticity and, you know, being authentically represented for them. So they uploaded those ads. And by the way, I always like to do the opposite, right? So an ad that is clearly trying and me authentically, but it's clearly failing. We learn a lot from, you know, the do's and the don'ts as well. And then so we got a lot from that. In a second phase, then we selected a total of, I think it was 48 respondents, so a few, and we invited them to, you know, for mini groups of 4 people each, to just get at that more intimate conversation, to get at those differences and the richer understanding of why, you know, what authenticity meant to them. So it was very interesting. We got a lot of examples. At the end, we were able to provide 6 key principles that actually worked across all of these, as well as themes that were very important to for the client to leverage for their specific communities that were, so themes that were unique of a specific group, but not another. So, and I love we made a lot of use of the homework, because it was not just telling them, about these principles and what to do, the do's and don'ts, but we did that in by way of providing these examples of this is what we mean by this principle. This is someone who is doing a good job. This is someone who's not doing a good job. So giving these examples of communications advertising that we collected from the homework was really very instrumental.
I love that the research ended by creating a framework that the team could use, like literally a tool that they could use moving forward to hone and refine this type of work moving forward. That's awesome. Wendy, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I've got two projects. I'll just share quickly one of them with you, but one of my all-time favorite projects that I worked on was with an entertainment brand, and they developed some princess dresses that represented all different cultures, because they wanted to give little girls, something to look up to, heroes to look up to that they could relate to, and just seeing the joy on their faces of being able to relate now to this brand in a much more heartwarming way, seeing the families embrace, the magic of this whole experience, and enhance their self-esteem and their body positivity, by seeing a reflection of themselves in these heroes that they're growing up with. That was one of my favorite projects of all time. But the one I'm going to talk about is with a clothing brand, and they wanted to better understand the plus size women's perspectives. So we started with doing some pre-work and asking for them to include some images of some of their favorite clothing and some of their own clothing from their own wardrobe, and how they looked and felt in it, and give some really good descriptions of what the difference was and what they were able to find when they shopped in store versus what they were able to find when they shopped online, and then the differences and how that made them feel. So that's when we were able to learn about, they don't love going into a store and, trying on, wardrobe there. They feel self-conscious. They don't like that, the brands are pushing, the plus size community to the back of the store. They felt marginalized that way. They didn't like that they were being labeled plus size. They preferred curvy because it feels sexy. It feels much more appealing. They want fast fashion that they can dress and go out in public just like everybody else does. If they want to go out for a nice dinner, they want to look like other ladies, who are 0 or double zeros, who are out there at the bar or at the restaurant. So it was just a really unique opportunity to explore their perceptions and their motivations for fashion. And we established some online focus groups, so that way they could feel part of a community of shared experiences. And that really just kind of gave them a certain comfort level to be able to go deep on some of their experiences and tag on to each other's experiences, and just kind of build a community and feel supported. So it was a really amazing study, and was really happy to be a part of that.
I love that. Just even the idea of creating community where someone might not even feel like they were part of a positive community before is really awesome. Ozzie, last but not least, is there a case you want to share with us?
Yeah, so my case was with a legal client. They don't provide legal guidance themselves. It's more of like a DIY legal tools and database of legal providers in an area, a kind of system. And they came in wanting to explore if kind of audience targeted websites for legal needs might be something that could be of interest. They had this hypothesis and wanted to test it out, and they wanted to test it out with the queer community first. And they came in thinking like, oh, what are the legal needs of the queer community? You know, we have adoption, we have will and testament, and marriage, right? And that was kind of what they had coming in. And so I encouraged them to kind of increase their sample size a lot, so that way we went from like 15 people on this bulletin board to like 45 people on this bulletin board to try and really capture the intersectionality that lives at the heart of the queer community, right? Which, you know, was successful in ways, and you know, there are always somebody that you're not going to be able to reach, but that's why we're doing more research. But throughout the research, we kind of asked them like, what are everybody who participated in the research had to have some sort of interaction with the legal system in the last few years, right? And we learned that the legal needs are a lot more broader than was assumed coming in. It's not only marriage, but divorce is a big thing in the queer community right now. A lot of discrimination, not only from employers, but from stores, and there's discrimination from the state itself, which was really interesting to hear. Things like the administration of changing your name and changing your gender on an ID, and the ways that can really be really difficult for people in this community, especially what we learned is that a lot of members of this community don't trust the community or don't trust the legal guidance they can find online, because if you Google getting a divorce, there's no getting a gay divorce website, right? There's this kind of assumption that whoever I get pointed to won't be speaking to me, won't understand my needs, and that's really scary. You know, a lot of couples that, or a lot of divorcees that we spoke to, like they were like, we have kids, but it's not my child, right? Like I don't have a biological claim to this parentship, and so what I need an attorney who can speak to me, but that like finding those specific resources isn't easily done online right now. And so it was really powerful to see just how strong of a need there is for a legal resource that kind of does speak to the queer community in this way. And one of the things that really got me excited so anyways, we learned that it's important, and the team is actually off building a prototype of that website right now, and we're going to come back to kind of see what happens, and see if they nailed it, or see if we need to do some more iterations on it. And I'm really excited for that work to move forward. The thing that really gave me a lot of hope and a lot of happiness with this project, that I asked them at the end of our bulletin board, I was like, if this legal website exists, like what is one thing that maybe isn't important for you, but you need to see on available on here? And every single one of our respondents said that this website needs to have resources for trans youth. And it was really, really important, really powerful to hear. So it made me really happy. And just seeing the community come together and say, like, I'm happy that we're thinking about this, and we need to not forget the most vulnerable among us.
You guys, I am so proud of the work that we're doing. I'll be very honest with you. I didn't know about any of these cases before you shared them with me right now. So it's just amazing. Like, it's just amazing to see the breadth of work that we're doing and just the impact that it has. I mean, and this is the power of being, you know, inclusive and understanding a lot of the challenges that reside at the margin. But what's interesting is that they end up covering everyone in the middle in terms of, you know, what everyone needs. So it's so awesome. We don't have a lot of time left, so I would love if we could quickly come up with a list of do's and don'ts for inclusive qualitative research. So we can start anywhere. So if someone has a do, who'd like to start with their first do? What should we do for inclusive? Go for it, Wendy.
I think you can tell from all of us, we love what we do. So have a passion for what you do.
Yeah.
And I just love
that.
Yeah. Do practice empathy as a client listening. And sometimes we have to help with that, you know, with some free things with client. Practice empathy as a client and as a moderator. I mean, we have biases. We all do. So
it's human.
It's human. So just how do we put them aside? And as Virginia was saying earlier, an open mind. So something about empathy. We really just have to focus on that.
Love that. Yeah. Virginia, do you have a do?
I think there's nothing, sometimes, you know, these conversations are very important, obviously, but sometimes they're complex and sensitive conversations. So I think I do more and more, I feel like there's nothing more powerful that consumers themselves speaking their voice. That I mean, for example, in reports, I try to include as many video clips as possible, telling their stories in their own voice, quotes that, maybe a little long, but, have, tell a little bit of the story. So to really, so it's the consumers themselves who disrupt these notions and really tell their story and illuminate this space a little bit. It's that they do it themselves. I don't have to do anything. I just have to give them the stage to.
Yes, I love that.
In that way.
I love that.
In the report, if you include the video, that tells the story in the consumer's voice, so that when it's distributed, other key stakeholders or who weren't able to be part of the interviews are able to hear it in, the power of the story through that consumer's voice. So I love including video in our reports.
Yeah.
Love that. Ozzie, do you have a do?
Yeah, I was gonna say just do be ready to hear that you need to do more. right. Kind of. This isn't a one-time project. It's something that's always ongoing, and throughout every project I've done that has DEI at the heart, the answer is more. Right? There's always growth, always things to learn, and always more research to do and more voices to hear. We're a super intersectional society, especially those who live on the margins of it, and so being willing to hear that you might be reaching 95% of the people, but those 5% of the people are important and really, really want their voices heard as well. And we can always do more and always do better.
I love that, because there's lessons in even that 5% for everyone. I'm trying to be mindful of time. I guess I could ask if there are any don'ts. If there are any don'ts, maybe we share a couple don'ts and then wrap up.
Yeah, I think Ozzie said it before, but I think it's important. Don't stop. Don't stay at the surface, right? There is a lot, beyond what the naked eye can see, and again, this is important. The companies, I think, they need to understand that consumers want companies to be part of the change. Especially diverse consumers are allowing, are kind of inviting companies and brands to take a stand, to be part of the change, so don't underestimate your own role and the power that you have to help, in this change.
And
phenomenal way to wrap up. Oh, go for it.
I would say, do purpose-driven work. Do establish your purpose, but make sure it's authentic to your brand, because if you're doing it with the wrong intentions, especially with the culture of Gen Z, they'll be very quick to call you out. So make sure that you live it all the way through your culture.
Yes.
From hiring practices all the way to your production to your output. Just make sure you're living it as an organization.
Yes, you guys were phenomenal. This was an amazing conversation that touched on so many important things relevant for inclusive research. So I am so grateful that you could be part of this conversation, and honestly proud that we're colleagues. This is really phenomenal. And I think one of the most important things we touched on is this work has the power to not only touch marketplaces, but touch workplaces and everything in between. So thank you. And with that, I will pass it back to Ellen. You guys are really phenomenal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Janelle.
Thank you.
Well, wow is all I can say. Super candid, really, really interesting conversation. Thank you, Janelle, and to all our wonderful guests, and especially to everyone who's joined us today. Please feel free to reach out to us. We always welcome an opportunity to speak with you directly. That now concludes today's Ipsos webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.